the meeting to order of the Grafton Planning Board on Monday, November 25th, 2023. We're doing this as a hybrid meeting with Zoom, so we have to.
Roll call. Mr. Robbins.
Present.
Mr. Davidson.
Present.
I am here. Mr. Venkataraman.
Present.
And Mr. Hassinger.
I'm here.
And staff present is Town Planner Fiona Coughlin.
Present.
And Natalia Alward is on Zoom.
Present.
Okay. Good. Well, our first item, as always, is public input. This is a chance for people to talk to us about anything in our purview that's not also on the agenda tonight. Is there any input? I don't see any. We'll move on. Action items. 5 and 9 Millennium Drive. Approval under subdivision control.
Sure, I'm just gonna share my screen.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Mark Bobrowski, my office. My partner Jonathan Silverstein handled this matter for Claremont and asked me to appear on his behalf tonight because I'm coming anyway to talk about the 40R. So I know enough to be dangerous, but my understanding is that the A&R is to cut off a piece of land from the adjacent property and put it onto the property that will be the site if everything goes well for the 40R development.
Anything else that you don't really need to tell us, Fiona? The plan looks right?
Yep, everything looked good. From the planning department's perspective, the applicant is conveying a portion of lot 1I, which is here in the corner, which would be 9 Millennium Drive, to lot 1H right here, 5 Millennium Drive. This is the portion to be conveyed. They're also creating a 30-foot sewer easement over a portion of the conveyed land in an amount of 1,937 square feet, which is indicated. Let me get there 1 second. Right here. Portion of the sewer easement, and then lastly, they're conveying a portion of an existing driveway easement from 1H, also known as 5 Millennium Drive, to 9 Millennium Drive, which is right here. I'm sorry, a portion of the existing driveway is right here. So, as Mr. Bobrowski mentioned, this A&R is a result of the zoning change that's currently being reviewed for a town meeting in the spring to create a subzone B for North Grafton Transit Village Overlay District, 40R in North Grafton. Other than, in terms of an A&R application, as I mentioned, the planning department had no flags in terms of, there was a initial request to indicate the frontage, which was added by the engineering team. And that was the major issue that we had. Other than that, we're satisfied.
Anybody with any questions or concerns?
My only question is just to confirmation of my understanding this will not negatively impact our bringing the 40R to town meeting. Is that, there'll be no concerns with that?
No, this should not be.
Okay.
No, it's not a standalone lot that could be built upon. So typically, when you do an A&R on a lot like this, you put a note on the plan. I haven't seen the plan, so
Yeah.
but there's typically a note, not a building lot without further zoning relief.
Yeah. The question I had, I don't think would have changed anything about approval for this A&R in the first place. It's just curiosity.
Yeah, no, I don't. Just issues.
We learn as we go along, but
Well, it's,
questions.
yeah, when you get a mistake, you learn and you fix
Oh.
it quickly next time.
You get to spend time up at the registry or something. All right, is there anybody else that has any comment?
Just a remark that it threw me for a moment looking at this plan, and until I realized it's upside down from the way I would have normally viewed it.
Oh,
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh, I see,
I
yes.
think the north arrow here is pointing down.
yeah.
Yes.
Or-
Oh, yeah.
You know, I might say no just because the north arrows. I figured out you should do north arrow up someplace.
I'm going to South America later this year, so this is good practice.
That's the Southern Cross that you go with, isn't it? Not the,
Anyway,
Okay.
I move that the board finds approval is not required and direct staff to do the appropriate documentation.
Second.
moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Mr. Davidson,
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Venkatraman
Aye.
and Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Thank
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you.
All set. Okay. Our next item is a request for withdrawal without prejudice for MRSP 2023-08, 61 Maple Street.
Yes, so I will be speaking to this. Let me just pull up the. Sorry, one second here. It's easier to show on Adobe. Okay. So this is a request for withdrawal without prejudice for the major residential special permit / preliminary plan application that was for the board, as Mr. Hassinger said, for Farnhamsville Acres, also located at 61 Maple Avenue. There was an issue with the abutters notices. They did not include the abutters listings for those folks in Northbridge. So we worked with them, and they are withdrawing and will be resubmitting shortly with corrected abutter notices and correct postings, etc.
I don't know that I ever thought about what you do if you need a butters from another town. You know, 1,000 times we've done it here. You go down the hall, but now you have to go someplace else and figure out. Anyway, any discussion? Any motions?
Move that we will grant the applicant's request to withdraw this application without prejudice.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none.
All right, Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Mr. Davidson,
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Venkatraman
Aye.
and Mr. Hassinger.
I vote aye. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving on. Economic feasibility analysis report in all its glory. God.
So, Mr. Chair, I do have Ernest Beinberger here to speak to his report. He has been working with us. He is our EFA consultant for MBTA communities. As we know, there is a portion of the Village Mixed Use South Grafton Zone that we're using for compliance, that the affordability threshold is too high. So we hired Ernie at Strategy 5 to help us out, and basically wanted to give the board an opportunity this evening to ask Ernie any questions that they may have. Ultimately, he'll incorporate any feedback, and this will be submitted with our application for district compliance upon eventual and hopeful approval at town meeting of the zoning. So it'll all be part of the package sent off after town meeting, and just want to work out any final kinks and make sure the board has an opportunity to answer any questions. And with that, I will turn it over to Ernie to introduce himself.
Good evening, everyone. Appreciate you having me here this evening, and appreciate the opportunity to do this work for the town of Grafton. I believe we've done a thorough analysis that answers the questions that the EOHLC are seeking, and that otherwise support the town's intention to have a 20% affordability component as part of one of the districts that's being proposed as part of the compliance.
Share my screen so that we can pull up any specific information that the board would like to view.
Happy to discuss any aspect of it, of course.
I think my question when I started to look through this is, what's the bottom line?
Well, the bottom line is that differing levels of affordability have an impact on the operational and financial performance of a project, but based on the methodology, this is a proven methodology, and pro formas that include quite a range of assumptions and other aspects of the analysis, that we essentially began with two distinct different types of projects: 200 rental units and 200 for sale units. And then, the analysis fleshes out from there. But the bottom line, to answer your question, is that a 20% affordability factor still allows for the achievement of a feasible multifamily development.
Do we need more?
I mean, we can elaborate for quite some time, but again, that's sort of the bottom line, and that's pretty clearly we made a concentrated effort from the very beginning to make the pro forma and the analysis, as clear as we could make it in terms of differentiating between, as we ended up with 10%, 20%, and 25% affordability, and to do that in such a way that there's no smoke and mirrors. We've gone to some length to even do a line-by-line explanation in the appendices of the different pro forma inputs and outputs, so that it can be understood and discussed as to how various numbers were arrived at. But I'm very confident in the essential finding that was the purpose of the study, which was to, again, assess the feasibility of multifamily housing with a 20% affordability component.
One thing that I will add as well is that Ernie and I have been obviously discussing this on a regular basis for several months now, but we did meet with the state during their office hours, as well as had a one-on-one discussion with a representative from EOHLC to discuss our checklist and making sure that we are incorporating the right inputs and including what the state wants to see. From there, it seemed satisfactory based on that conversation. So Ernie is now at the point where he has basically finalized all of the requirements of the report. This is just really at the tail end of the process. Ernie, I do believe that you will need to send me the the Excel version of the data. But other than that, the checklist and the pro forma assumptions are finalized, as well as the report. So that's...
You need the Excel version of the pro formas and stuff, or the checklist?
I believe it's the...
have it all, but I'll
yeah.
obviously get you.
I would just take the Excel version of all of it, so that we can make sure that we're not missing anything.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So yeah, other than that, this ultimately what we're doing is we're reducing the affordability threshold in the VMU by 5% by default, making it
Yeah,
more conducive to development, which is
mostly, I'm interested in the priorities of doing what we can to achieve safe haven and doing what we can to get more housing that people can afford, even below, if we could, even below the regular state 40B level. And I think you're telling me we're doing the best we can.
Yeah, if for this particular situation, yes. In its infinite wisdom, the state has decreed that for MBTA compliance in a district such as our village mixed use district, they don't want to see a requirement for more than 10% affordability unless we can demonstrate with the economic feasibility analysis that 20% is feasible. Yep. They won't let us go above 20%, however,
Right.
and that's where we're, from our perspective, from the perspective that you're expressing there, Bob. That's where we're a little bit stuck. Mm-hmm. If, as if anybody doesn't know this already, if we were able to maintain a 25% affordability requirement, then for rental units, if 25% of them are affordable, we get to count 100% of them towards our SHI, which helps us reach safe harbor.
right.
But that is not a possibility here, but we are doing the best we can by demonstrating that 20% is feasible.
Yes, exactly.
And just for the record, as obviously you'll see in the report there, we did look at 25% affordability. So we've got 10, 20, 25%. And in fact, the 25% affordability really is demonstrated to be feasible, economically feasible as well. We get into a little bit of a semantics about between feasibility and profitability. And so that's a kind of an involved topic that I may or may not want to get delved into this evening. But we did look at 25%, and 25% is shown to be feasible, albeit less profitable than 20%, which is somewhat less profitable than 10% affordability, but nonetheless, I think clearly demonstrated to be feasible. But it was quite clear in the discussions with the state that the 25% was simply not going to be allowed. So that information and that data and those projections are in this report as well, should that be of some value to you, in the future.
Okay.
And it probably doesn't hurt to have that data as well when we're telling the state we can do 20. Like we also can do, in theory could do 25. We have it on paper, but
yeah, I think the fact that 25% shows to be feasible is a point in favor of 20% being
yes,
feasible.
Do we have everything that we can look for? I mean, I've got an agenda.
Yes, yes. I have no further questions. I mean, I've looked at an earlier iteration of this, and you discussed it a little bit with Ernie and Fiona. But so I have a fairly good sense of the details that went into this. But I haven't reviewed the details in this latest submission. But I'm comfortable that this is a credible analysis, particularly since you guys have spent some time discussing with the state. So we have reason to believe that this will satisfy the state's requirements.
Yes.
And I don't feel I need to dig deeper right now.
Just also to mention that the 10, 20, 25% were tested both in the rental model as well as in the for sale model. Mm-hmm. So in both cases, 25% was shown to be feasible, but the 20%, clearly right down the middle as far as it being,
okay,
bracketed by the 10 and 25%. It's well within the bracket of feasibility there.
Okay. Well, does anybody need anything more on this? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ernie.
The state's trying to get more housing, but by doing that, they're making it harder. And hurting the 40B, affordability in the process.
Yeah, it's an interesting,
We'll only have
Situation.
20 instead of 25.
yeah, and only
So
20% of
they're
it.
reducing it. They're not allowing as much. Probably more than one person working on this in Boston,
Probably,
with perhaps different.
yeah.
All right. Are we okay?
I'm good with that.
All right. Really? Oh, I see. Oh, I see. That's strange. Okay. Bills. Any bills? No bills.
No,
Minutes. No minutes.
we're working on those.
Staff response.
Sure.
Staff
I will
report.
be quick, because I know we want to take our time. Again, most.
Excuse me, Fiona.
Go ahead, Ernie.
May I be excused, or do you wish me to stay?
You're welcome to stay, but I don't think, I think if you have better things to do with your time, you know, we appreciate your time and the work you've done for us.
Well, I'm actually a little bit under the weather, so I am going to excuse myself. But thank you very much for your time, and I'm always available for further discussion and questions. Fiona and I have a pretty close working relationship, so it's been a pleasure.
Thanks,
Right,
Ernie.
Thank you.
And again, thank you.
Okay, so first and foremost, the master plan workshop is coming up. It is October 19th at Grafton High School Commons, 6 to 8 p.m. Please, please come. Tell everybody to come. Spread the word as much as possible. It's a great opportunity to provide feedback for how you want to see Grafton going forward, policy changes you'd wish to make, and basically have a say in the growth of your community. So please join us. We'll be joined with the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, who will be hosting in conjunction with the Planning Department and the Master Plan Working Group, who is a wonderful group of folks, really smart and ready to answer questions. So that is number one on our list right now.
I know one person who was confused when this was referred to as being at either Grafton Common or Grafton High School Common, because common, maybe people with students in the school call it the Commons, but I don't think most of us do. So, most town people, I think, hear Common and we're going to be out in the gazebo. So just be aware of that.
Okay, yeah. We've been trying to make a point to say,
Yeah.
High School Commons. I am new to town, so I might have let it slip once or twice saying common, but it is the Grafton High School Commons, which is their cafeteria. So we're very excited. It'll be a science fair style event, focusing on key topics ranging from housing, economic development, and transportation to natural and cultural resources and quality of life. So please come and share with your networks. In addition, I have been doing a lot of warrant article work. I had a meeting with FinCom last week. Went very well. Nothing major to report from that. Mr. Robbins was present as well. So that was great. I went to the Tufts Hazard Mitigation Workshop on last Friday. That was very informative. They are updating their 5-year hazard mitigation plan, and really it was a great opportunity for staff to interact with the folks on the campus and work together on upcoming grants and basically merge our efforts. We recently updated our hazard mitigation plan and are currently working on implementing that. So trying our best to create partnerships and work together, because it is hard to implement these plans. I have been focusing on mainly application processing and those types of day-to-day activities, but I want to keep the focus on the more longer range and long range planning projects. We had a call with VHB about our MS4 compliance requirements and our 5-year report. That is Leah from the Conservation Commission is working on submitting that soon. I have grant reports that are due on October 1st, so I'll be focusing on that for the next couple of days. In addition to site visits for projects, as well as assisting members of the public with inquiries, updating our websites. Another big focus of mine has been closing out and helping the housing production plan consultant get our second workshop up and running. So scoping out a venue for that. Yeah, a whole slew of things going on. If any members of the board want to talk specifically about a project, let me know. Right now it's mainly working on what we've got, the longer range planning projects, and doing the subsequent reporting that's required. So not really chasing anything new lately because there's only 2 of us.
So that's about it on that?
Yeah.
Well, in that case, correspondence, does anyone wanna do anything with correspondence? I think you heard about the one thing that was in there. If not, any reports, from planning board representatives as to town committees and CMRPC?
A small report on the Open Space and Recreation Committee, since I am the board's rep on that. The process, the project with Central Mass Regional Planning that the OSRC kicked off with CMRPC last month for prioritization of potential future property acquisitions is underway. The OSRC is going to be meeting next week to sort of review some material for that, but also in the OSRC's radar right now is a sort of revisiting the idea of a trails committee, which if you were if you happened to listen in on the discussion at the select board not too long ago, there were some questions about the trails committee, the way the charge was written. So the OSRC is going to be revisiting that. It's an interesting situation in terms of trails activity in town and who does what. So the committee is going to be reviewing what they came up with in light of the discussions that have taken place outside of the committee, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything else? We have a minute and a half. Is there anything? We have to wait till 1:30 because the formal hearings are posted for 1:30.
Mr. Chair, Natalia has her hand up.
Natalia?
Natalia wants an attendee to be a promoted to panelist.
Oh, okay.
Haley.
Thank you.
Done. Natalia, if you notice anybody else that needs to be promoted to panelist, because I'm noticing there's a few attendees that might need that permission.
Tetra
let me
Tech
know.
probably is going to be
Probably, yes.
wanting to participate in the discussion.
Jacqueline as well.
Natalia's hand is back up.
Sorry again. Haley's going to want to share her screen, by the way.
Okay.
Well.
Is Jacqueline being promoted, Natalia? I'm assuming yes.
Yeah, she should be.
Okay. Yep. And
Anyway, if somebody needs promotion, what, you do the hand up to get some attention.
Yep.
All right, it being 7:30, we'll start in on our zoning bylaw amendment, article hearings.
All right.
The first one,
I have a legal notice as well.
Hmm?
I have a legal notice as well.
I know that. I'm looking for, ZBL 2023-01.
The legal notice is for all. So pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 5, the Grafton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, September 25th, 2023, commencing at 7:30 p.m. in Conference Room A at the Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, Grafton, Mass. The purpose of the public hearing is to provide interested parties the opportunity to comment on proposed amendments to the Grafton zoning bylaw, which have been submitted to the 2023 Fall Annual Town Meeting warrant as follows. ZBL 2023-01, amend Section 13 entitled North Grafton Transit Village Overlay District, NGTVOD, to add a subzone B and all associated requirements. ZBL 2023-02, amend Section 5.10.2 entitled Definitions by updating the definition language for marijuana retailer and off-site medical marijuana dispensary to align with the Mass Cannabis Control Commission's regulations. ZBL 2023-03, amend Sections 3.1.2 zoning map entitled Town of Grafton, Massachusetts zoning map by creating a new overlay district entitled MBTA Communities Overlay District. ZBL 2023-04, create Section 14 entitled MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District to allow a minimum of 15 units an acre, 15 per acre of multifamily housing by right in a designated overlay zones of reasonable size for compliance with Section 3A of MGL Chapter 40A. ZBL 2023-05, amend Section 3.2.3.1 entitled Appendix A, Use Regulation Schedule, to add new regulations for seasonal outdoor dining. ZBL 2023-06, amend Section 2.1 entitled Definitions by adding definition language for tractor-trailer. A complete copy of the text of the proposed amendments to the Grafton zoning bylaw is on file with the town clerk and of the planning board office in the Grafton Municipal Center and is available for inspection during normal business hours. Individuals requiring special accommodation at the public hearing should contact the planning board office at 508-839-5335 extension 1400.
Okay, and maybe this would be a good time to mention that there's another zoning article that didn't make it to us to get scheduled tonight, and we're gonna have to have a special meeting Thursday,
October 12th.
the 12th,
Yep, with the ZBA.
at 7.
7. Yep. In this room.
For that one has to do with changing setbacks in residential zones, more or less.
All
The
zones.
the
All-
the wording on the
all
legal notice for that one. I have the wording for legal notice on that. I can read the bullet point just for anyone's looking for that one. Amend Section 3.2.3.2 entitled Intensity of Use Schedule by adding footnotes that reduce side and rear setback requirements in each zone to allow accessory structures to 1 and 2 family principal uses that do not occupy more than 200 square feet. That would be at our October 12th meeting.
Okay, so be aware that there is that article and that there will be a hearing in case you're interested. Now, we can start with 2023-01. North Grafton Transit Village Overlay District, NGTVOD.
Mr. Chair, if I may start, before we allow comments from the public, I just want to note that this is the article mentioned earlier in the meeting. We are, that is, I'm sorry, going to be a subzone to our North Grafton Transit Village Overlay District 40R. We are still waiting for comments from the state and an approval letter before town meeting, which is required to move forward. So I just want the board to bear that in mind. it's critical that we get both that feedback as well as that letter before proceeding, and we have decided the planning department would recommend, with approval from the board, holding off on making any amendments or having significant discussion about this article until we can get that feedback from the state, because then we can use that to modify anything that we need to, and use that as jumping off point.
Is
essentially.
the expectation that if we do not get the approval from the state before town meeting, that we would pass over at town meeting?
Yes.
We would have to, yes, yep.
Well, I don't know whether you have to, but you don't want to pass something and then have to come back and change it.
We,
You won't be ahead at all if you do that.
no, we got dinged by the state for passing it without their approval back in 17.
I want no part of it.
Easy to understand. So, who has something to talk to us about?
I wanted to take this opportunity to thank the board for seeing
Introduce
us
your-
through, thank Mr. Robbins for
Introduce,
helping.
name, right?
Mark Bobrowski, my office is in Concord, I represent Claremont. And my guess, and it's just a guess, is that the feedback we'll get from Mr. Rail at DHCD will be minor, because he created a template, we've followed it, we've plugged in stuff, I haven't heard anything negative, so I don't expect there to be voluminous changes to it. But because the warrant's closed and it's been advertised, whatever he says, if you agree with it, and I hope you will be a floor amendment. So we'll be making a list of changes, and my usual practice would be to hand it out as hopefully a single sheet of paper to voters as they come into the town meeting. Obviously, put it on the screen for them to see it as well. And there'd be a package of floor amendments, call it housekeeping, that Mr. Rail will want to see before the final version is voted by town meeting.
But in order for us to, I don't know about act on, but certainly in order for town meeting to approve, we have to render a report.
Yes.
And right now, we're only reporting on what we currently have. And I don't know whether we'll have an opportunity to do something about a report relative to the amended version. What can, this caught somebody years ago. They amended an article, a citizen petition, no, someone got up in town meeting and moved an amendment before the planning board report came in. And it was, now we were voting on something the planning board had never, didn't have a report on. And just as soon not have that problem.
Yeah, I think, this, for more than one reason, this has become a little bit more complicated than it really should have been. Among other things, the markup that we received from Bill Rayolt and you, Mark, the markup we received was a markup against the 2017 version of the zoning bylaw. And I'm kicking myself for not having done this earlier, but as I did, and this is based on my experience with the general bylaw update, I took the markup and basically took the old version, compared it against the current text of the bylaw, and found a couple of the discrepancies. Not, fortunately, in areas that the markup touches. But if you want a more lengthy explanation, I'll give it to you, but to keep things simple, what we finally came up with, I shared this with Fiona last Friday, what I finally came up with was the latest version of the zoning bylaw with the changes that came in from Mark and Bill. So applying that same set of changes, but to the current bylaw. And just to make things a little bit more complicated, what ended up in the warrant was an imperfect translation of what we had submitted to the warrant, which was, I think that was a slightly imperfect translation of the markup, the Microsoft Word change track document that we got. So what we have in our possession now should we be able to go forward and use it, is the change track markup that we got from Mark and Bill, which is all the states corrections or suggestions plus the subzone B suggestions. We have a version of that now which we can be confident is an appropriate set of changes to be applied to the zoning bylaw. But because of the imperfections in the warrant, we can't, it would not be practical for a floor amendment to detail some changes against what's in the warrant, because that would become incomprehensible. Now, just the way everything worked out, which is not a roadblock. I mean, what we would end up doing is, from the floor, is incorporating the appropriate language essentially in the motion from the floor. Probably we would embed that corrected language in the report of the planning board, but however we do it, if we don't get any changes from the state, we have something, let me put it, if we get approval from the state without changes or with truly, de minimis sort of changes, we have something that we can work with on town meeting floor. The alternative is, if we don't get the approval from the state on a timely basis, the planning board's report will have to recommend passing it over. So I think we could accommodate this in a report. It depends upon what we get from the state and when.
I've heard nothing from Bill Rail to suggest that you won't get something. And I don't think Fiona has either. I spoke with him as recently as a week or 10 days ago.
But we haven't. And we should know the kind of timelines that town meetings have.
Yeah, I think that the changes from the state will be minor in nature.
If they come.
Yeah.
If we don't have an okay from the state, maybe we just charge right ahead with what we think is good, and then.
We don't want to do that.
No, I don't think Bill will take very well to that, so.
No, I think he made that pretty clear with his
If you look at the document that I'm looking at now, there's blue changes, which was the changes that Bill would have made had you not gone forward, 2018, and then there's red changes, which are mine, in the track change version. So he wants those changes, and I think for that reason, he'll be quick.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, hopefully the point is clear that we have a document with all of Bill's changes and your changes. We have a document that correctly reflects the changes to the current text of the zoning bylaw. So we have something we can work with. Right now, there are three possibilities. One, we don't get a response from the state, which means we can't move forward. We pass it over. Two, we get a response from the state and they have no further changes to offer us, in which case we have something that's ready to rock and roll. And three, we get a response from the state with some changes, which we can't anticipate what those are going to be.
Yeah.
If they're sufficiently minor, we could go with it. If they're more than minor, we may need to do some more work, and we probably won't have time to get that wrapped up before a town meeting.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I see us being.
Yeah.
Whatever you guys want to do.
What one thought, Bob, and I want to just ask this and see if I'm totally out in the field or anything on this is, would we potentially schedule a planning board meeting for half hour before town meeting to just, if the state gives us back what we would consider minor changes, we would decide as a board that we support those minor changes to add to it, or is that too late for our timeline?
It's a little bit late, but we have a meeting on the 12th.
Yeah. I heard that with glee, so.
Yes.
Fiona was talking about.
Which she was planning on only doing one short thing at, but, well, it may be short.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would not be comfortable trying to tackle this a half hour before timing, because one of the things I would want to see is, if we're going to put forward anything other than a motion to pass over, we need to be able to print the text that we want approved. We need to be able to print it and distribute it at least as people walk into town meeting.
7:44 p.m.
Well, we'll be working with Fiona to make sure that happens.
Okay.
If I have to hire a legion of people with laptops to make it happen, we will, so.
Yeah. You know, and like I said, I've got a version of the marked up, you know, section 13, ready to go if Bill doesn't give us any more changes.
Yeah, would you share that with me?
I'd love to.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be happy. In fact, Fiona has a copy of that.
Okay.
So the other thing that we would have to do is translate that into a motion. And that's, you know, the markup copy we have is the red and green highlights. I've got a version of that translated into black and white. Which there was a whole nother complication regarding how that looked in the warrant. Unless you want to talk about that tonight, I'm not gonna.
Who?
Suffice it to say, we have the documentation to move forward with if we get approval as it is currently submitted to the state.
My guess is that if Bill is prompt, he will give us a clean version without track changes in it, which would be the ideal thing to put before the voters because it's the final product.
Yeah.
Is there any question of getting whatever into the form, if we're coming down to the wire, into the form that goes up on the screen for people to see?
That can happen at the last minute, pretty much. The last day, not literally the last minute, but,
Well, okay.
yeah,
Well,
if,
okay.
for example, we know on October 12th what we're gonna do, there should be no problem getting that presented to town meting in a
Okay.
form that works.
But 30 minutes before is time.
No, that's, yeah, 30 minutes,
Fair.
that's why 30 minutes doesn't work for me. So I just don't think we can
yeah.
get it.
And if
We
on the procedural front, if we're thinking about taking this one zoning article up at our October 12th meeting, does that mean that we have to continue our public hearing for all of them
Yes.
technically?
That's
Since it was
It
advertised
should
as
have
a
been.
single public hearing, I suppose so.
Yeah.
However, we can dispose of all the others tonight.
Yeah,
Hearing will
yeah,
have
it
to be
doesn't,
continued.
we can close the hearing, but we can have results, report or whatever put together if we want to.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to say okay to to our reports somewhere along the line anyway.
Right, and we're gonna be doing a report for each one of these warrant articles, so yes, we can
All right,
Yeah.
all right.
Anyway.
do the report.
All right,
my recommendation would be, Mr. Chair, would be to go through, collect input for each, continue, if the board sees fit, and allow more time, because the way that the hearings were advertised, it was one legal notice, and to keep it clean and correct, and this is upon advice from council as well as the TA's office, that is the best way to probably proceed, but that's.
Okay.
you're in touch with all them. I'm not. Does anybody else want to have anything to say on this one at this point? All right, I don't see anyone. Let's go on to, whatever it is, number 2,
I look forward-
definitions.
Look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Have a great night.
Number 2, definitions.
For marijuana retailer. Yep. This is for the marijuana retailer definitions. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And you've,
I'm just saying out loud because I don't think, in case anyone's trying to follow along, we don't have it on screen at the moment. So
that's all, right on.
Sorry.
that's okay.
All right. Anyway, this is to amend section 5.10.2 involving definitions of marijuana retailer and off-site medical marijuana dispensary to allow, to align with the Mass CCC regulations. And does anybody want to say anything about this or ask about this? It sounds like we pretty much need to catch up with the CCC.
Just aligning our definitions with CCC's most current regs.
There's some current turmoil at the CCC in the state too, but that's unrelated to this.
Totally unrelated.
What's that?
Turmoil with the CCC in the state, but it's
Oh, that's only,
unrelated to this.
that's only in the T and G. I think, I've noticed that they don't seem to get much done. I mean, all the marijuana, people that have come through us have had long delays, and at least a lot of it has been what they have to go through. Okay, then I think we can move on to 2023-03, amend section 3.1.2, the zoning map. This is to catch up with some of these zoning changes that we've been doing, and also I asked that the way that everything was represented was getting out of hand for me, and we got a new coding, which I think is better. There's solid colors for the zones, and there's stripes for overlays,
Stripes and other patterns for the overlay. Various
Yes.
patterns for
various
overlays.
non-solid patterns for overlays.
Right, and so on. The water supply overlay district must be in there.
Yeah, that's the
There it
dots.
is.
Oh, the dots.
Yes,
The dots.
ours are the green army.
The green with the squigglies in it.
Yes, it's
Is
not
the-
crosshatch per se. It's some weird twiggly version, but it works and it's different and it's distinctive. So
It's challenging to come up with different patterns that can be
Yeah.
reasonably well distinguished from one another.
it's true.
Three
we
different classes of data overlapping each other
Yes.
in a two-dimensional
And we
drawing.
have overlays upon overlays upon
Yes.
overlays. We have several layers of overlays.
And this is probably a map that is extremely hard to read if you have any form of color blindness.
Yeah.
Yes. Fair
Well-
to say,
Yeah.
this is unlikely to be friendly to colorblind folks. I'd spent some time thinking about colorblindness and putting together the bylaw committee's report, but I didn't. Yeah. Adobe Photoshop has a tool where you can use to visualize the what it looks like to colorblind people.
Do they have different color blindnesses?
Yes.
Their tool addresses the two most common types of colorblindness.
This
Well-
is definitely an improvement from our first version, which was beyond.
Well, I have them back.
green.
I have them back to Blue Line Xerox. With hand, where someone hand wrote on the
Oh.
master for the change. Okay, most, I guess we have two things here, right? We have recasting reformatting the way the map is represented, and we're representing new zone.
Yes, indicating the overlay zone with its 5 sub-districts labeled MCMOD 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then the symbology to accompany that. This is
And-
this article will accompany the next one that we'll be speaking to, the MBTA community zoning.
If it turns out that we can't act on what we just talked about, is what happened to the map?
We are still using MCMOD 4, otherwise known as 5 Millennium Drive, which is the article we were just speaking to, for compliance.
Although, the only impact is we can draw the zone here. The impact on 3A compliance is going to be if we do not create subzone B underneath this particular green area there, then that is going to end up not being included in the compliance workbook that we send, because
Yeah.
the zoning in that area will no longer be relevant for 3A compliance.
But
So-
town meeting will have adopted a map
Yes,
that shows something that it didn't pass.
actually, no, the way, we talk about this more in the next, the words for section 14 of the zoning bylaw. Section 14, in the case of 5 million, it it creates that as part of the MBTA zone, but all the zoning parameters come from the underlying zoning there, which in this case here, the underlying zoning, this could actually, it will affect the workbook, the calculations done for compliance.
7:55 p.m.
It's worth exploring the question of whether that will adversely affect the compliance model if we don't have the subzone B. We can look into that. I don't know the answer to that. I suspect it will not adversely affect the compliance model, but I'm not sure about that.
Right. I mean, I can of course follow up, but we were in compliance before we
Yes.
before we decided to use 5 Millennium.
Yes, we were, without 5 Millennium, we're in
We were still in
compliance.
compliance. Yep.
The open question is whether by including 5 Millennium in the workbook, but without the 40R parameters, will that adversely affect the compliance model? I suspect not, but we'd have to work that.
Not so worried about workbooks. I'm worried about town meeting adopts a map, I think. And it
Yes,
says that there's a zone, something or other, or an overlay, or a whatever, a footnote. And it must be gonna show something that isn't true if we don't pass the zoning change.
actually, no.
No?
The way we
All right,
wrote,
all right, no. We're all set.
the way we wrote that language, it's an
Oh, God.
unusual.
Okay, okay.
It's an unusual situation. It's worth thinking about, though.
Yeah,
I don't
well,
want to dismiss the concern.
no, I certainly don't wanna do that. Does anybody have anything on this? Would seem not. Alrighty, ZBL 2023-04, create MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District. Can someone explain this?
Yes, I'm happy to. So this is the MBTA Communities Overlay District language to accompany the map that we were just looking at. The board is probably very familiar at this point with this language. We worked with CMRPC to draft this bylaw update. We are using the recommended language from the state. As Mr. Robbins mentioned, for majority of the districts, we are using underlying zoning for compliance. Hence, we are kind of bypassing some issues with brought up by Mr. Hassinger regarding the map. There's our sub-districts outlined, definitions, permitted uses with dimensional standards and affordability requirements. I'm going to stop here. There is at the time when we had to get our placeholder in for town meeting, we had to submit what we had, of course, which was this document. We did not have the economic feasibility analysis finalized, and can confidently use our 20%. So there is we left this in this language, but the board will need to modify that to omit the 10 units and include the 8 and remove the parentheses, and obviously the if we're going with. So this line here needs to be updated to move forward with 8 units to comply with our zoning because we're using a 20% affordability threshold. So that is, the board doesn't need to act on that at this immediate moment, but it is something that will need to be amended. So something to consider. And I also did submit that in a separate document here. So the original text is here. This requirement applies to all residential mixed-use developments with 8 if we're going with 20% or more dwelling units, whether new construction, substantial rehabilitation, expansion, reconstruction, or residential conversion, parentheses, applicable projects. No project may be divided or phased to avoid the requirements of this section. Changing it to, this requirement applies to all residential and mixed use developments with 8 or more dwelling units, whether new construction, substantial rehabilitation, expansion, reconstruction, or residential conversion. So it's just want that the board to be aware that is a change. I'm happy to talk through the rest of the bylaw, but severability is the last section. That is the only change that the planning department saw that we needed to flag for the board's attention.
No, that was the only element of this that was up in the air, based depending on the feasibility analysis, which we heard how that came out.
Right, exactly. That was Strategy 5, Ernest Feinberger, who spoke earlier in the meeting about the findings of the EFA. So now we can confidently move forward with 30%.
So we'll handle this in one way or another as via the motion made on the floor.
Right, exactly. Thank you, Dave.
The planning board report will have to address that.
All right. Anybody have anything to say about this? Any questions? Any questions? In that case, that was number 4. Up to 5. Amend section 3.2.3.1, use regulation schedule to add new regulation for seasonal outdoor dining. And, this is a fairly simple one. Want to,
Sure, I'll give a little quick spiel. We are adding under business uses, a use for establishments selling food prepared for seasonal outdoor consumption, where customers are served primarily at a table or a counter. This was brought to our attention because of the outdoor dining regulations from COVID and the success rate, and are continuing to receive applications for outdoor dining from restaurants in town. So through a special permit for a majority of districts other than the neighborhood business and commercial business districts, which will be by site plan review, we are allowing the board to have discretion over a seasonal outdoor dining and granting permits to allow or not allow for that use depending on the application package. So
any comments or questions? Anybody? No? Okay.
almost
We can move on from there then, if I can. Okay. That brings me to, that's the wrong one, I think. 5,
No, we're on 6.
no, that's the one I was doing. 6. Amend section 2.1 definitions by adding definition language for tractor trailer.
this is a something that was brought to the planning department's attention from the zoning by the zoning enforcement officer. We need to have a definition for tractor trailer and what constitutes a tractor trailer in our bylaws, so that obviously having that going forward so it's clear, as well as from an enforcement perspective, being able to prevent issues with tractor trailers, namely idling. So that is, it's just making, this is kind of the first step that a community and zoning enforcement officer takes when trying to establish regulations for enforcement, is actually defining what you are trying to enforce. So that is this.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Apparently not.
Regarding continuing, we do have a meeting on October 2nd as well.
Well, why don't we continue to October 2nd?
Or we could do the 12th and just do it all in the one day.
Why
The
don't-
sooner we get this done, I think, the
Yeah.
better.
I think the more bites at it, the more likely it is that we can get it right.
Yeah, and meanwhile, based on the results of tonight's hearing, we can ask staff to draft planning board reports for these, with the exception of,
I think she's on top of it.
just make sure that we have had the situation where we didn't actually get the reports drafted as soon as we really should have, but, yeah, I mean, you know enough now that, with the exception of the subzone B, which is still up in the air, I think the planning board report for the rest of these is pretty straightforward.
Should one of us sign a continuance request?
No,
We can simply, on our own
Yeah.
initiative, we can continue this, right?
yes, we could anyway, but we never do. As a matter of policy, you don't because of, anyway. But you might wanna,
I think it would be appropriate at this time for me to make a motion to continue this hearing on the zoning bylaw warrant articles to Monday, October 2nd, 2023 at 7:30 PM.
Second.
moved in second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none.
Mr. Robbins.
Aye.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
And Mr. Hassinger.
Aye. The motion carries unanimously. Okay. Request for special permit, SP 2023-10/SPA and site plan approval for 7 Main Street.
Good evening, everyone. Zach Couture with HS&T Group. With me, Mike from All Face Glass. He's the owner applicant. So we're here tonight for 7 Main Street. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the site. This is the old Polish Club. What we plan on doing with the site is that existing building has since been raised. And then we're going to remove some parking. Remove some impervious surface to create room for 2 buildings that will act as warehouse and like a light fabrication manufacturing operation for Mike's company, All Face Glass. We were slated to become in front of you a few weeks ago. We did receive comment from planning, which I felt necessary to address before I came in front of you, mostly due to the fact that there was some outdated zoning information out there, which unfortunately was tied in with a little bit of the design. So I wanted to make sure this actually conformed to your most current zoning bylaws, and that's the reason for the change. I'd just like to briefly go over a couple of those changes. It really has to do with the placement of the buildings. Before we were going off of the older industrial warehouse zoning information that was out there. Now this is the flex zoning tied in with the village mixed use district. So essentially the biggest changes are the buildings are now shifted closer to the road just to conform with that zoning. And then to meet the side setbacks, where before they were a little closer to the sides where they're now tied into the middle. Also, we rearranged the parking configuration. Before we had a row of parking between the 2 buildings, and a couple things came up with that. Mostly the fire department and also changing the building locations. The fire department wanted a way to come in and out without any interference. So we did rearrange the parking configuration, and we did shrink the parking down. Originally we had 30 spaces based off of that outdated zoning. We only need 20, so we are providing 20. Mike usually, he doesn't have a large workforce there a lot of the time. I believe it's only 5 or 6 employees.
Currently at 5 vehicles per, so I'd say up to 10 in a perfect world if we get people back to work.
And he doesn't have a lot of off the street walk-in business, so we're providing kind of the bare minimum, as it's already kind of overkill for his type of use anyways. And how we plan to do that is we moved 5 of the internal spaces down, which are going to run along a proposed gravel area, which will create the other 15 spaces. So like I said, leaving that center part open for in case of an emergency vehicle, and also too for his trucks to kind of go in and out, as we are using the loading bays as kind of his loading areas, as his trucks will kind of go in and out and unload and load material as needed.
If I may add just one thing on that, that's not loading docks, those actually drive-in doors. So we don't use tractor trailers. I think I get maybe in the last 5 years, 1 tractor trailer delivery. It's apparatus that can drive in the building, vans, small 10-wheelers, at the biggest is a 10-wheeler, something that can drive inside. So it's not loading docks, tractor trailers. coming in.
Kind of your standard garage bay operation for something.
10 by
like that.
14 doors, driving, all drive-ins, no loading docks.
Exactly. Another key change too was just showing the amount of disturbance, as this does fall within it's the water supply protection overlay district. Just to make sure we weren't over that, which we're not. We're at 34,719, so we're just under the threshold, as well as providing a cut and fill analysis as well, which we did include. That's on your last sheet of your plan now, which we have a net cut of 125 cubic yards, so it's not a large removal of soil on the site. We are proposing a new stormwater system, as there's currently nothing there. That'll consist of catch basins, manholes, and a pipe network that will go to an infiltration system, just to capture some of that runoff. We're also proposing a storm scepter too, which will capture that parking lot water and clean it up before it gets infiltrated back into the ground. That has been designed for the site. We are still waiting on Graves Engineering's full review of that, and as well as other engineering aspects. So we're not in front of you tonight necessarily looking for approval. It's really just to introduce you to the project and maybe get a little bit of board feedback, because we will have to go back to the drawing board a little bit and respond to some comments, and we will have to revise the plans more than likely based off of Graves, and I believe there's still a few things from the town we have to provide as well. I know you have other meetings, so I'm not going to keep you long, but with that, I'd like to open it up to just your comment, your feedback, or if there's anybody from the public who has comment and feedback. That's really what we'd like to get out of it tonight. So thank you.
Well, one thing, I've just noticed some of the folks that live and down in that vicinity, out on social media, have been concerned about that there's no place to park for the local businesses, particularly like the pizza, I think. Are you aware of that? Have you been aware that that was a concern? It seems to have gotten to be more of a concern with the upgrading that they've just done on Main Street, but also apparently the Polish Club didn't mind when people would pull in to their lot while they ran in to get their pizza or whatever it was. Have you been at all aware of that?
If I may address that, absolutely. I have been crucified in social media. My family's been attacked in social media. Peter, the president of the Polish Club, went to George and Georgia, the owners of Fancy Pizza property, and offered them a 40-foot section prior to this property going for sale. They offered them the whole property. They went back and forth. This property sat there for 1 year. They declined to buy it. Under no circumstances does that fall on my shoulders, or no, but I'm not saying that, but the public has crucified me for that. You know what? At the end of the day, that sat there for a year. They had a chance before it went public to buy it for their business, to provide parking for their business. They declined. The Polish Club allowed them to park there with resistance. There was turmoils because people were taking advantage of it, dumping trash inside their parking lot, yada, yada, yada. The day that I purchased the property, I brought my insurance company down there so I could get insurance, just because the world we live in, we have to have that liability. And the first thing that happens is a Harvey waste truck pulls in, backs down towards the back tree line, and he gets out and he goes into Fancy Pizza. No problem with that. What comes out of a big rubbish truck? Water, fluids. Where is that going? Right down towards the black zone. They looked at me and denied me. They weren't going to insure me unless we closed that down for liability purposes. And I get it. I mean, there's a waterway there. I guess what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, and this is going to make me sound heartless, and I don't mean to, because anybody that knows me, I'll give you the shirt off my back, and I give to this community, not just this community, my country, our country. At the end of the day, that's not my problem to deal with the Fancy Pizza parking issue. They had a chance to buy it cheaper than I paid for it. I'm talking 50% cheaper than what I paid for it, and they didn't want to do nothing about it. Shame on them for not doing it to protect their business, but that's We tried, and they came over to me and they asked me, they're like, "Oh, can you give me 20% to park over here?" Listen, for what it's worth, I'm sitting at over $1 million cash right now to purchase that, to abate that place, and to take that building down. I'm $1 million cash sitting on that property right now. I can't give it to them. I mean, come on.
No, I understand, but I suspect it would be hard for them to buy it either. I'm not really thinking of the business. I'm thinking of all the folks who try to go and get pizza.
Yep.
And the sort of the community
Yep.
aspect that we lose some of. Anyway, we know the conversation, and if there's anything that can be done to help, it'd be good.
Yeah, from
I mean, it was a simple solution on their part, and then I say this, it was a simple solution on their part to buy that little strip, and they would have solved all their problems, you know what I'm saying? By all means, look I'm not gonna say no to people, but right now, with the lot, the way it is with the construction equipment inside there, we've already had 2 issues with, equipment being broken into there. Which I live right across the street on Keith Hill Road, okay? I mean, I can throw a stone from my house and hit it. We live in a very good town, safe neighborhood up there. But when the vandalism starts, we caught a gentleman, I won't say the gentleman's name, across the street on Main Street, couple houses down, drive his Bobcat in there and was changing his oil. That was it. I was done. At that point, I was done, because I don't want that, and to boot, it was letting it just go into the ground. It's like, are you serious? I mean, this is our town.
Okay. Anyway,
Thank you.
it'd be nice if we could somehow help the community aspect. You might even want to walk over there and get a pizza, for all I know.
I talk to him all the time. I talk to George and Georgia and the owner, the owner of the place. We do our best to work with them.
Okay. Well, anyway, I wanted to be sure that.
Yep.
What I've seen is at least spoken to. Anybody else have anything? Anyone out there have anything? Anyone out there have anything? Because we're going to have to continue this.
Yeah.
Materials are still coming in.
I do have a.
Sure.
Mike, if you could just explain what your business does. There's been a few inquiries from the public about certain materials that are being used, and I just would like to have it on the record of that.
Yeah, we're a
What you're
full-fledged
doing.
glass company and a maintenance company. As far as materials go, glass mirror, screens, plexiglass, Lexan.
Okay.
The probably the biggest hazardous material that we have is probably at any given time up to 5 gallons of gasoline, which is stored in a flammable storage cabinet, legal, OSHA approved. And that's for our lawnmowers and power washers and stuff like that. But we have denatured alcohol on site that we use to cut our glass. We really don't have hazardous material. I mean, paint is considered hazardous material nowadays. Yeah, you might find a few gallons of paint, but we're not, nothing like 55-gallon drums of anything, oils or anything like that.
Okay, yeah, no, that's perfect. Our bylaw allows for, some standard material like you
Yep.
described. It's just with the water supply protection overlay district, it's very
Yeah, no, we're,
focused on hazardous material. So I just wanted to make sure. Great. Awesome.
Great.
Thanks so much.
So glass and some other materials.
glass mirror, plexiglass, screens, we have plywood on site, lumber, stuff like that, I mean, we're a 24-hour board-up
Okay.
company.
But you're not really trying to sell retail.
No, less than 0.1% is walk-in business. Now, I don't forget where I came from. I started off at 12 years old sweeping the floor in a glass shop, and that's how I built this company, was residential stuff. We still have people come in. And this is gonna sound awful, we don't look for that kind of work. We're more commercial work on the road. We cover all of New England, so our work is on the road. But I don't say no to our local people either, by all means. They wanna come in, they need help, by all means, we'll cut them a piece of glass.
So that just gives an idea of the nature of, you won't have a lot of people walking in.
Negative, absolutely
They're not
not.
gonna stop and get some glass on the way to the pizza.
Negative. I mean, no. Like I say, less than 0.1%
Yeah,
is walk-in
okay.
business.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick up my pizza in a big plate glass window at the same time.
There you go. Oh, maybe we can deliver both. Maybe I could be making some extra money here.
Now we're, now.
Off phase delivery Uber.
Okay. Is, one more time, is there anybody, we're gonna have to continue this to get more information. Or
Yep.
They're gonna have to ask us to continue this, for more information. But there's nobody more that wants to speak at this point. Okay,
See anyone?
Yeah.
why don't you tell us that you wanna continue and,
Yeah, we would like to formally ask for a continuance at this point, just to allow time for Graves to review, us to get those comments back and update the plan set for you folks.
And our choices of dates here, we've got a meeting 1 week from tonight, which I suspect may be a little bit too soon.
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah,
I doubt we'll get the comments back in that
Right.
time.
We generally want to give you guys as much time as you think you need. October is an odd month with the 9th. Normally our meeting would be on the 9th, but that's Indigenous Peoples' Day. The 16th is not available because that's town meeting, so the 23rd. The 23rd is probably the earliest practical choice, and if that's comfortable for you, if you want to go later, that's fine with us too.
I think let's stick with that October date.
23rd?
Yeah, the 23rd. Because I'm pretty confident that once we actually get the review memo back, then my office can turn it over very quickly. It's more so waiting for Graves.
Fiona will have a form here for you to sign. And
Move that the board grant the applicant's written request, which is about to be received, to continue this hearing to Monday, October 23rd at 7:30 PM.
Okay, great.
Jim seconded it.
oh,
Yeah.
I didn't hear it.
Yeah, I heard his second.
Well, you know, they all
Moved and seconded.
moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I got one quick question for you. Sorry about that. Once we get back from Graves, and we go in front of you guys and everything matches Graves, what is the next procedure as far as like for us, for me personally to move forward? Because this is my livelihood. And the building we're in now, we lease, we take care of it like it's our own, but they're trying to triple our lease there and
Yeah.
it hurts, you know?
Well, we have to close the hearing, and have a draft decision prepared. This might be a case where Fiona could do that. You know, if it's looking good to draft a decision, you might be able to have one for the 23rd. Usually, we close the hearing and tell her to draft a decision, you know,
Yep.
the next meeting. But there's a chance we'll get that. When we vote and approve the decision, gets filed with the town clerk, and there's 20 days, appeal period. And then it's done. You typically wait until the appeal period is over before you.
Right.
Technically speaking, the applicants can always choose to start work during the appeal period, but that's a great potential risk in case there is an appeal.
You do that at your own risk.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, and you might, I don't know whether you get any pushback from the building inspector, because you don't quite have your zoning yet.
knock on wood, Bob, and I knock on wood, Bob has been supportive of this, I mean,
Good.
at the end of the day, look, I'm just trying to provide for my family and my employees' families, and for the community and our customers, that's what
I think we have a motion.
We do.
Is there any more discussion? Hearing none.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Venkatraman
Aye.
and Mr. Hassinger.
I vote aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank
See
you
you
for
on
your
the
time and
23rd.
consideration. Thank you very much. Stay safe.
Alrighty, now, this is our last thing, isn't
Our
it?
last thing.
Yes, it is.
Amazing. Unbelievable. Request for special permit, 2023-06/SPA and site plan approval, at, 124 Westboro Road, continued from August 28th. How are we doing? Why don't you
So
tell
I'll
us
do
how we're
a
doing?
brief overview once I find my paper that I wrote. So the folks from 124 Westboro Road are here this evening and will be able to talk in more detail, but I will just start with a brief intro. The applicant submitted the application on the 29th of June, is scheduled to appear before this board for the second time this evening. They have been very good in responding to comments from staff to date. They submitted a series of exhibits, which I will bring up here. A series of exhibits that were uploaded to the project page in response to concerns. Honestly, when I reviewed the information that was provided, I did not see anything that was an issue. Everything was either acknowledged, incorporated, or satisfied through the submission of another exhibit. For example, the good neighbor commitments, the applicant went kind of beyond and submitted extra information. This evening, we really should focus on any specific questions for the transportation study. We do have our transportation consultant on the line this evening. Dan and I believe the applicant's transportation consultant Courtney is on, so they will be able to talk more about their findings. Since we probably should also discuss Graves Engineering and their peer review and the applicant's response. I did find some data upon request of the chair at the last meeting, ridership data for the WRTA, as well as some additional data from CMRPC. So that is uploaded. We can talk about that once we get through the some of the other more substantive exhibits here. But the applicant's revised drainage report is something that we should focus on this evening. Their response to my their letter response to my memo. Any earthworks volumes discussion, as well as the demographics detail report. Each of these should probably be mentioned, and I'm assuming that Haley and team will be able to bring up anything specifically. But I think the biggest thing this evening is to kind of wrap up. We're at the tail end, I would say. For the most part, everything seems, in the planning department's opinion, satisfied more or less. I think the traffic will be the biggest thing. Can't speak for the board, but with that being said, I did have a couple of comments that I will bring up later. I know that you have you're currently going through the process with Concom, and I know that they have a couple of comments as well. So I just want to make sure that we're aligning with that process. So that's my long-winded introduction before I turn it over to GFI and their team. So
thank you, Fiona. Thank you to the board for welcoming us back here again. For the record, I'm Haley Palazzola. I'm here on behalf of Westboro Road Property Owner LLC. So as Fiona mentioned, I won't try to not repeat exactly what she said, but since the last meeting on the 24th of July, we conducted a site walk for the planning board members, 3 of the members, on August 25th, where we walked through the property and kind of some of the off-site characteristics as well, to just give the board an idea of the existing conditions. We also received the planning staff's memorandum and provided a response memo to that that was submitted last week, which I'll go into some of the details with you shortly, just kind of some of the things we wanted to highlight. As Fiona mentioned, we received our Graves Engineering peer review of the stormwater, as well as our traffic peer review from MDM. We've provided responses to both of those. We received another response from the traffic peer reviewer, which I think Courtney's going to address some of those comments this evening. And we're still waiting on the final Graves peer review responses. We did provide the board with an updated plan set. I think the biggest change, which I'll let Josh kind of provide some overviews if you have specific questions on the plans, was we added sidewalks, internal sidewalks that kind of navigate through the existing property and lead out to Westboro Road at the request of the board. And so with that, I guess I'll go ahead and just highlight some of the things that were mentioned on the planning staff memo. There was a comment we received from Brian Scuzarco. I'm sorry if I pronounced that correctly, of the engineering department. He requested that we look at potentially installing future duck banks for a potential signal apparatus at the Westboro Road and Institute Road intersection. We understand that there's currently no traffic signal designed or planned for this intersection at this time. So instead, we have provided a $25,000 contribution to the town for pedestrian improvements along this area of North Grafton for however you see fit. As well as we're limiting all truck traffic from Institute Road. So at this time, it didn't seem necessary while we don't have any off-site improvements even at that intersection. Another comment was on the lighting. So I'll just flip to that comment. The applicant should confirm that the slight increase in glare on the west side of the site will not pose adverse impacts on surrounding properties. The lighting plan shows that negligible light levels along the westerly property line and illumination levels at this intersection of Institute Road entrance and Audrina Lane are limited to the intersection itself and should not have adverse impacts. The other one was on signage. Planning department didn't have any further comments on signage, but just asked that we coordinate with DPW, fire, and police departments. So we have done such, and they had asked that signage be consists of clear address signage as well as signage indicating trucks will be entering and exiting via the Westboro Road entrance. Continuing on to landscaping. I'm sorry. The noise levels. There was just concerns that we should confirm that the noise levels associated with loading operations will not impact surrounding properties. We acknowledge this comment, and based on the site design and grading, we confirm that the noise levels associated with the loading operations will not adversely impact the abutting properties. And in addition to these, we provided a list of good neighbor conditions that we're willing to commit to ensure that we do not impact the neighboring properties. There was also a comment regarding landscape screening and buffering, that satisfactory buffering between the project and Woodland Hill subdivision will be required. We've revised the plans to include 18 taller trees along the ground level to provide desired screening.
I think there's 84 shrubs mixed in there too, just to try to provide a nice buffer from the subdivision.
Thank you, Josh. And then the last question, I believe, was on the presence of ledge. We do anticipate that rock ledge will be encountered, and because of this, we will be blasting operations and monitoring in accordance with 527 CMR 13 of the Board of Fire Prevention Regulations. So we do expect some blasting, as did the neighbors next door, but we will make sure we comply with all regulations. So that was kind of the highlight of things that I have on the memo from planning staff. Did you want to highlight some of the plans?
Yeah, I can just speak to, Fiona, your comment about just touching on updated drainage report, revised plans. The majority of the Graves comments were housekeeping items, didn't require a lot of plan revision, but it did require updating some of the drainage report, and some minor adjustments to the plans themselves. Nothing significant, pretty much still consistent with original design and what we had presented before you last time, with some minor modifications. I can go into more detail if you like, but that's kind of high level. Graves drainage report, plan revisions to address Graves comments.
So with that, really the only thing we're left with waiting for is to close the loop on that with, Graves reviewing your response.
Correct.
And then COMCON also to
Yeah, that's,
weigh in.
yep. But, yeah, that's as far as the engineering goes, that's kind of where we're at with that, it sounds like.
I didn't know if you wanted to go into traffic or, Courtney, if you don't mind just providing a brief overview or any outstanding items on the traffic peer review?
Sure. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay,
You're-
great. So as Haley mentioned, this afternoon we received supplemental comments from MDM. You might recall that they submitted their initial comment letter in August, and we submitted that response to the town last week. And today was MDM responding to our response to comments. We haven't had a chance to go through the updated comment letter in detail, but based on a discussion I had with Bob Michaud this afternoon, we've generally covered most of the outstanding items, with the exception of some additional supplemental analysis that they've requested at the proposed site access on Route 30. Happy to go into more details, or I know Dan from MDM is here as well, but that's just a quick overview.
Thank you.
Dan, did you want to provide any comments or clarifying points from your report? And if so, please let me know where you need me to click around to. I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah, so we could quickly go over, I guess, what we have for, we believe, outstanding issues on it's the site access points, specifically the Westboro Road side. The sight lines that were shown on the plans by Bowler, specifically looking to the west. It's going to be under page 5.
Thank you.
And then it'll be under a final comment. Yeah, so specifically looking to the west, the given the speeds out there, pretty much higher than the regulatory speeds. So to meet the safety-based criteria for the stopping sight distance and intersection sight distance, we need more detail based on survey out there to draw the actual profile along that sight line, adding in guardrail and other features that are located within there. We did note that the sight line to get the 350-foot minimum for safety goes over what appears to be on Bowler's site plan as a wetland. So we need some clarification if that sight line can actually be cleared and how it would be maintained, if the Concom has to get involved, or if something would have to be filled in, if they fill in the wetland and replicate it or something. So we need some details on that. We need some information on if the existing guardrail would be too high to block the sight line, if that would need to be relocated, issues like that. We do agree that if you could clear the sight line, it would be fine. But we just don't know if that's feasible, given the wetland that goes through there. It goes behind where the wetland flags are, so we're assuming that that material may not be able to be touched. So that was one item on there. The applicant is willing to look at speed radar signs to slow people down, advanced intersection signs, which would be great. Those would have the ability, the speed radar sign, for example, may be able to slow the speeds down there by another 5 miles an hour or so, which would kind of bring them closer to 40 miles per hour, which would definitely help for the sight line. I know that it's posted for 30. People are doing well over 40. So in terms of meeting that safety criteria, it's pretty tough. Best to do it that driveway. We had the comment that came up for the $25,000 contribution for sidewalks. We acknowledge the contribution and agree with some type of funding would be appropriate here. This is on page 3. Our recommendation to the board is that the amount of the fee, the 25, they'd want to look at that, have that backed up by some type of actual mitigation. In this case, it might be worth putting in a crosswalk with a rapid flashing beacon and a ramp on the other side of Route 30, so that people that use the MBTA buses to get to and from this site would have a safe place to cross. So that type of funding, if you come up how much that type of improvement would cost, would probably be an appropriate contribution. So we can, we'll defer to the town on what you would like to see for a contribution, consistent with other developments in the area. But that would be something they might be able to come up with a concrete cost for and either implement or give a contribution. Let's see. Similar to the driveway on let's see here. There we go. Yeah, so the Institution Road driveway, we like to see the sightline profile looking to the left for ISD. It probably would be a good idea to go out and get supplemental survey now that that road looks like it has recently undergone a road diet, which may help slow the speeds down out there. It's been reduced in width and the hill has been cut down. It appears just by the grading, it may be 5 or 8 feet lower than it used to be to help improve the sight lines for the driveway across the street. So it'd be good to know and put the sight line on a plan and draw out the profile for that one as well, so we know what would need to be maintained and how we can get closer to and meet the safety-based criteria for that driveway as well. The one other outstanding item that we picked up just today was we received the auto turn for the fire truck, which is going to be the last final comment here, number 13. It was sheet EX01 by Bowler. It's page number 8. They provided that auto turn, so we just want to make sure that the fire department looks at that and they're comfortable with that plan. We didn't see any issues with it, but just as long as they're comfortable with access would be great. And then we're recommending that the applicant submit a auto turn for a WB67 articulated tractor trailer truck at the main driveway going in and out for all the movements on the Westboro Road side. It appears that those movements, given the existing geometry, just quickly looking at it with a template, that they may need some geometric improvements and enhancements of the corner radii at those locations so that the vehicle doesn't have to sweep into oncoming traffic at an already difficult sightline intersection. That being said, for one reason or another, if the sightline doesn't appear that it can be satisfied, given the current location of the driveway, we recommend that the proponent look at shifting the driveway on Westboro Road to the east as much as possible. And that would allow the sight lines to come out of the wetlands and potentially in front of the guardrail and items that could actually be cleared. So those are comments from us. I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have. But
Bob, I had a question, if I may.
Sure.
Sure.
So this was regarding the comment about the crosswalk. Hey Dan, this is Prabhu here. So what was the thought about the crosswalk? Was that you said across Route 30? Was the crosswalk, the thought behind the crosswalk, was it at the intersection of Institute Road and Route 30, or where this facility is going to come and the entrance to this facility and crosswalk from that gate across Route 30?
Yeah, so it'd be the driveway on the Route 30 side, because they have the sidewalk coming out to the end of that driveway there. And then it would connect across the street, so you could use the flag down bus system. You could tell the bus to stop on the other side. You'd have a safe place to cross once the bus cleared. we recommend rapid flashing beacons at that location to enhance the visibility.
Okay. And for our board, the question is Route 30. I thought Route 30 was not. It doesn't belong to Grafton, right? Isn't that a state road? And is that even a feasible thing to have across? No.
No, Route 30 is town owned
Okay.
in this segment.
This segment. Okay.
Yeah, and the state does, if it was state, the state does allow those features. You just have to get it approved through them. But in this case, Courtney is correct. It is a local road under your jurisdiction.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
From where that crosswalk would be, how long a walk is it up to Pine Street or into the train station? Any idea? Just, ballpark.
I
I can answer that, Dan, real quick if
Okay.
you want.
Sure.
It's about a half a mile walk to Pine Street and then another quarter mile to get into the train station. Upon a cursory review, there may be some significant constraints along Route 30, and that would have to be reviewed in very comprehensive detail. And that's why we had the discussion with the WRTA and CMRPC regarding their service past the site. And we feel that it is most appropriate to spend the $25,000 contribution towards an improvement such as Dan mentioned.
Towards what? An improvement.
The crosswalk that Dan had mentioned. Crosswalk.
Yes. So MDM's recommendation, Dan, I'll let you describe this again, but my understanding is MDM's recommendation is that they generally agree with some sort of contribution to pedestrian accommodations. They're just recommending that it be tied to a specific improvement. Their recommended specific improvement is a crosswalk with rapid rectangular flashing warning beacons at the site driveway on Route 30. That's part of their new comment letter. So we're going to, I'll review with Haley and Bowler and evaluating the feasibility and appropriateness of such crosswalk.
So,
But Haley's group the applicant has committed to a $25,000 donation to the town.
and I've never had anything to do with the WRTA bus, but I think I heard that they do a flag down.
Yes, they do. And we met with them to confirm that they provide that service along Route 30 in both directions past the site driveway. And it originates and it begins and ends at the T station off of Pine Street. And they did confirm that they believe there's adequate capacity in the shuttle vans they use to support not only this project, but the additional residential projects across Institute Road that are being constructed.
Okay.
I continue to be impressed with the amount of preparedness these exhibits you guys are submitting. I think the diligence you're doing, it makes my job a lot easier. So I do appreciate that, and it sounds like we're getting pretty close to having all of our ducks in a row.
Well, there were a number of things mentioned on traffic that need to be dealt with. Unfortunately, just as I went to look at all the newer stuff here this afternoon, the power went out, which is a fairly frequent occurrence up my way. So I didn't get as much of a look as I would have liked. But we get that every couple of weeks or so.
Seems like it.
No, did yours go out?
No.
Yeah, because you're on a separate.
My half of the road is on a different feed than yours is.
Right. He's on the south half of George Hill, and I'm on the north half of the power company.
So it's usually one or the other of us loses power. Not often that we.
If we both lose it, that means the town's out.
That's a major thing.
Okay. So, is there anybody with more at this point?
I have nothing more at the moment.
So, if you wanted to request a continuation till sometime.
You heard our discussion in the previous project on the likely dates for continuation, so pick one that works for you.
I guess October 23rd is the soonest we would probably be ready. I don't think we'll be ready next week. So
Yeah, we kind of think just a week is not likely to be able to.
Yeah, particularly when it's nice to have submitted everything far enough ahead so that the people who don't work here full-time have a chance to,
The board likes to have a few days to review the submitted materials.
as hard as that is to get.
So-
So the 23rd.
So I'll move that we grant the applicants to be received written request to continue this hearing until October 23rd at 7:30 p.m.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I just have a comment. So we are, just so I'm clear, we are waiting for updates on the traffic information, and that is it.
There's also we're also awaiting a follow-up from Graves.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, a response to the.
We're not,
Okay.
as I recall from the discussion, we're not expecting any major issues to come out of that, but it just, to close the loop on that.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And there was.
Yeah, my understanding as well is there might be revisions to the plan depending on what they come out with the traffic information as well as Concom.
Yeah, you might,
site distance.
you might need to move the driveway.
Yeah,
because
we're
of
gonna
wetlands.
attempt to get Concom approval for the clearing. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Initial look suggests it doesn't look that bad, but we'll see what they have to say about it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so it was moved.
When
and
is your
seconded.
next Concom?
October 3rd. I
Okay.
think it's next Tuesday.
Okay. And so, yeah, there's a couple of other comments that Leah forwarded to me too that you probably will address at that time, but, okay.
Okay.
I believe Drew from Bowler, who's on, was in contact with Leah today.
Wonderful. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask, would it be inappropriate to contemplate a draft decision prior to the 23rd? Are we not there yet?
There's some open, what are you gonna need to do's. But you can, she get, if she can,
Yeah,
Sure.
you know, and she doesn't need to tell, she doesn't need us to tell her to work on it. She needs us to be ready to, you know,
Yes, if the board should happen to have a draft decision in front of us on the 23rd, and all the various issues have been resolved, it's not out of the question,
Thank you.
but depends on staff resources.
there's an awful lot, you know, town meeting and
Understood.
a lot
Yes,
of.
I
if
will
you were
say that.
Listening
Yes.
earlier, and the master plan and, oh, God. So anyway, and I don't know how well Concom can, respond. But, you know, as much as you'll be talking to her.
Sounds
See
good.
what you can do.
Thank you very much.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? Hearing none.
Mr. Robbins.
Aye.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
And Mr. Hassinger.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
See you in a month.
Now then,
Oh,
is there anything else that can lawfully come before the board? Apparently not.
I will move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded, not debatable.
Mr. Robbins.
Aye.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
I vote aye. And Mr. Hassinger.
I vote aye. We are adjourned. We'll see you, what, next week?
Yeah, we're back here next week.
Wow.